In the previous video, we covered what is welfare economics and consumer surplus. Today, we will begin with producer surplus. Producer surplus is the benefit that sellers receive via participation in the market. This participation is selling of the commodities. So it's computed via this formula: amount a seller is paid for a good or service minus the seller's cost of providing it. So it's very crucial to understand the difference between the first statement and the second. So amount a seller is paid for a good or service, it usually refers to the market price of the good. And the second one, I believe it's quite clear, the seller's cost of providing it. So this is the cost, and cost is the value of everything a seller must give up to produce a good. So that's why we say that the price producers are willing and able to sell it. Maybe the total cost is 100 rupees, but they don't want to sell it at 100. They might want to sell it at 150, adding the time of research or adding the time they spend on developing this commodity rather than just keeping a track of all financial costs like the rent they pay, the tools, equipment, the raw materials, the wages, the salary. So apart from that, they also value their time. For example, there are different saloons and they all charge different prices for haircuts. So the equipments and tools are same, but every seller provides or try to provide a uniqueness. So, and they charge you for their time or for their services. So, this is an example that every producer has a different cost of providing it. And cost just doesn't refer to financial cost only, but also the opportunity cost, the value of their time. Calculating producer surplus, it's very simple like consumer surplus. You're aware of the formula, you need to know the values, and you just plug in the values in the formula. So, suppose that you're a seller and you made a commodity, or maybe you decided that you will not provide your services below $200. In this $200, which is your cost, you have included the opportunity cost as well, and also some ratio of profit. So you analyze and you get to know that the market price of the same service or same good is $500. So 500 minus 200, you receive a producer surplus of $300. Now don't confuse producer surplus with profit. It's not profit. Generally, surplus is referred as something which is left over or anything in excess once it has served its requirements. But profit, it's calculated via total revenue minus total cost. And remember, in this cost, which is 200, the seller has already included its profit margin. As you're clear with the mathematical derivation of producer surplus, let's see how you depict it graphically. So, you earned a producer surplus of $300 because the cost of providing of the good is $200, whereas the market price is $500. So 500 minus 200, it's $300. Remember, in order to depict it graphically, you always have to draw a supply curve because producers are associated with supply. Supply curve depicts different producers and different prices they will charge. So you notice when the market price is $200, there are only 5 suppliers. Whereas when the market price increases from 200 to 800, there are 35 suppliers of the same good. This is the law of supply. So coming back towards the depiction of producer surplus, it's the area below the price and above the supply curve. So the price is $500. So all the shaded area, this yellow triangle, is your producer surplus. But remember, producer surplus varies to different producers. For example, if there is a producer whose cost is $400, whereas the market price is $500, his producer surplus would be quite less than the previous one. He will only earn $100 producer surplus. But what happens if the cost is equal to the market price? As in, you don't want to supply the commodity below $500 and the market price is also 500. In that case, the producer surplus is zero. You won't earn any surplus. But what happens when the cost of production is higher than the market price? For example, a seller who want to sell the commodity at $600 or $700 or even $800, you notice they already are out of the market because the price is too high. They won't be able to make any sales. So any seller whose opportunity cost is below the market price, they will be able to earn any surplus. And the supplier whose cost is equal to the market price, he would able to generate sales but won't be able to gain any producer surplus. As you're clear on producer surplus and how do you depict it graphically, let's see how producer surplus changes if price fluctuates. In this scenario, the price is increasing. So initially, the market price is $500 and your cost is $200. So you earn producer surplus of $300. But suppose due to some reasons the market price rises from $500 to $700. Now here, what happens to your producer surplus? 700 minus 200, your producer surplus has increased to $500. So all the shaded area is your producer surplus. But being specific, this gray rectangle is the producer surplus due to increase in market price because previously your producer surplus was $300. Now it's $500. Whereas this little green triangle is the producer surplus due to new entrants into the market. Remember, as I mentioned before, the providers whose cost is higher than the market price, they will be out of the market because they won't be able to make any sales. But now few of those sellers are in the market because market price has increased. So at price 500, there were only 20 suppliers and at $700, there are 30 suppliers. So that's your producer surplus. But what happens when price decreases? Definitely when price decreases, producer surplus also decreases. Total surplus helps to measure the efficiency or economic well-being in the economy, which is computed with the formula consumer surplus plus producer surplus, which is very simple. As you're clear on both of these concepts, we can have both curves, the demand and supply, and consumer and producer surplus in one graph. So as you know, free markets are very efficient in resource allocation. So that's what we measured, that how much consumers and producers have benefited via interaction in the market. So demand curve and the supply curve, demand curve shows different buyers who are able and willing to buy a commodity at different prices. Whereas supply curve shows different suppliers providing the commodity at different prices. So here the equilibrium price is $500. So the consumer surplus will be area above this price and below the demand curve. The green triangle is your consumer surplus. What about producer surplus? It's the area below the market price, which is $500, and above the supply curve. So you sum it up, you get total surplus.